Hey Palos, welcome back to Heyblabber Podcast, the one and only podcast devoted to Jar Jar Binks and all things Gungan. I'm Mike, I'm your host. Let's get to blabbering. I hope you enjoyed our interview last week with award-winning songwriter Double EGOT and Cousin Jar Jar writer Robert Lopez. Today we're back with another interview. I had the opportunity to talk to Patrick Cotnoir, who is the producer on the long-running George Lucas talk show and is also a big Jar Jar fan. Patrick recently produced and hosted a live reading of the Phantom Menace and has a follow-up production of Attack of the Clones this weekend, August 10th, called The Great Kamino Kaper. We had a great conversation about all of this and more. I hope you enjoy it. Here's the interview. So today I'm talking to Patrick Cotnoir, who is a producer on the George Lucas talk show and who recently produced and narrated a live stage reading of the Phantom Menace script called The Naboo Movie at Dynasty Typewriter in Los Angeles, California. He also has a follow-up to the Naboo movie called The Great Kamino Kaper coming up, which will be taking place in a few weeks on August 10th, also at Dynasty Typewriter. So welcome, Patrick. Thank you for speaking with me today.
Thank you so much for having me. An honor to be here. To finally meet face to face.
Yes. So I want to talk about the Naboo movie and the Great Kamino Kaper, but I feel like we should start with the George Lucas talk show and your involvement with that, since it kind of seems to me that that probably has led to a number of these other projects. So for those of you who don't know, the George Lucas talk show was a monthly show that took place at UCB Theater for about 5 years and then moved online to, for a long time, weekly show that aired on Twitch and Planet Scum while that still existed. The general concept of the show is, what if after selling Lucasfilm to Disney, George Lucas decided to become a talk show host? And of course, it's not actually George Lucas, but a very funny comedian named Cotnoir Ratliff, who is portraying George Lucas. So is that all fair, correct?
I think that's all right. Yeah,
all right.
That all sounds right. Yeah, we just hit 10 years, which is crazy.
And so were you involved from the very beginning? I just watched, so you also have the I'm George Lucas, the Cotnoir Ratliff story, which has just come out in the last few months, right?
Yeah, it's a documentary.
Okay. So I know in there, I think you said something about you had gone to a number of the shows, like you were going to the shows anyway, and then you kind of became involved in a more official capacity.
Yeah, so Connor and I were working on this other show called The Chris Gethard Show, and that's where I met him to begin with, and I sort of just immediately knew, like, oh, this is one of my guys, you know, like, I'm gonna go see everything that this guy goes and does as a live show or whatever. And he told me he was doing this thing. I was a big Star Wars fan, but it had sort of lapsed at that point because that was 2014, so it was pre-Force Awakens, but in that weird lull between Revenge of the Sith and Force Awakens. So the love was there, but it laid dormant for a little while. But I was going to the first show and I got a call from him maybe 15 minutes before saying, hey, so-and-so was supposed to do warm-up for the show, be the warm-up comic, and they can't do it, so I need you to do it. And I was not a performer. I was not, that was not my thing at all. And I was like, no, absolutely not. Why would I do that? And he said, look, I just need you to do it. It's going to be fine. It's going to be easy. Just go for it. So I did it. I got there. I did the warm up. I did the whole, like, who's here from out of town? Who's been to a live talk show taping before? Like the standard questions that they ask before you go see Fallon or Seth Meyers or whoever. And it was fun and it was fine. And I got over the fear of being on stage in front of people. And that was good. And I just kept going to the show, and I missed a couple up top, but not really that many. And I would get there early and just help him set up, and like I would film the show on my cell phone from the front row, just so we like had an archive of it, so he had an archive of it. But I never considered myself like working on the show. And then one day, a couple months in, we were in the bar in front of the UCB, and Connor was introducing me to someone. He says, oh, this is Patrick, my producer. And I was like, what are you talking about? Like, we've never spoken about that. That's never been a conversation. I had no idea that you considered me that. And he's like, yeah, you're my producer. You've been my producer for a while. And I'm like, you got to tell people those things. You can't just like spring that on them and assume that they know these things. But yeah, and that was almost 10 years ago. The show's been going on 10 years, but that was probably 9.5 years ago. And we're still here. We're still doing it. So it's my role has evolved a lot. I started like booking the guests pretty soon after that because he was running out of friends to ask. And eventually during COVID, when we were all stuck at home, the three of us were like being very cautious about stuff. We were like not really leaving the house. And when it became a live stream show, it sort of just made sense that I would also be on there because I think we were all losing our minds and needed people to talk to. So it just felt like the natural next step in the evolution of the show. And yeah, we're still there. It's been a very rewarding experience, and it's something that I've gotten to meet so many cool people and work with so many cool people because of that. I will always have fondness in my heart for that show, no matter what happens.
So that, I guess that kind of touches, I was going to ask, because you are a very big part of the online show. Mm-hmm. So the stage show, you weren't as much, you were just behind the scenes. I was never on stage. No one ever referenced me. It was purely behind the scenes, was not a part of it at all, really. Okay. Which is wild. And so we should mention that on the show, George Lucas has a sidekick, Watto, played by Griffin Newman. Also, originally, it looks like Jar Jar Binks was the sidekick for the first, 2 years or so? 2 or 3, probably. I forget the name of the person who played him. Yeah, it was this guy, Sean Diston, and he did it for a few years, and then he booked work in LA and had to move out to LA. And at that point, it being a monthly live show, it was impossible for people to, not impossible, but it would have been very difficult for people to commute for a monthly midnight on a Friday show. So yeah, he did it for a while, and he, at the time, was not like a huge Star Wars guy, just knew the general things about Jar Jar. Right. And the general, pop culture feelings for Jar Jar. Since then, he is now a gigantic Star Wars guy, has watched all of it, is heavily into the High Republic, which is very funny because I think his relationship with the show would have been so different had he been super into Star Wars at the time, But it's very funny that he's come around on that hardcore. Has he ever returned since he left? Has he been back on the live show or any of the... When Connor would do live shows in LA, which he did occasionally before COVID, there was probably 2 or 3, and Sean would usually be the sidekick for those. And then he came on our first live stream on May the 4th, 2020. But by the end of his time on the show, his Jar Jar was no longer Jar Jar. Jar Jar. He was basically just himself, dressed as Jar Jar, and he would treat it as if he was the actor Jar Jar. He's booking work. He's doing all these things. He's, working on set, and his voice was basically just his voice, So it wasn't Jar Jar anymore, but it still had the spirit of Jar Jar, I guess is the best way to say it. Gotcha. Yeah. All right. So I guess it's different depending on the show and the guests, but how much preparation goes into an episode of the show? I saw in the documentary, you, Connor, and Griffin had meetings about, at least one specific show. And I don't know if that's all the time or if that was special for whatever was going on. I was talking about Twigs from Endor. I think it was related to Galaxy's Edge when that first opened. Yeah, I mean that is weirdly one of the things in the documentary. I don't want to use this word, but I think it's the easiest way to describe it. That was sort of baked for the documentary because we don't normally do meetings that often. Okay. It's usually text chains, but that's not visual. You can't really get that in the doc. I'm very happy that exists though, because that was our biggest show at the time. It was our Star Wars Day show, and we were trying to do our own version of Galaxy's Edge because I don't think Galaxy's Edge had opened yet, but we were let's beat them to the punch and do our own version called Nebula's Rim. So it's not normally meeting in person. We've done a handful of meet in persons, but it's normally just texting or emailing it back and forth saying this is what I'm going to do. Sometimes we'll do calls and whatever, but in person is rare. The prep varies guest to guest, like you said, but a lot of times, we had Kevin Smith on, for example, on the live stream during lockdown. And I was I'm just going to rewatch all of the Kevin Smith movies beforehand. So that was something it was very easy to do that during lockdown, to do a lot of prep for that kind of stuff because we had all the time in the world, Right. But it depends on the person. It depends on if they have something specific that we want to talk to them about. If there's, I don't know, if there's a movie that they're in that George worked on, I will sometimes rewatch those just to remind myself. But I think the three of us have such a very specific pop culture knowledge that normally we do not have to rewatch things or remind ourselves of things because that's just how our brains work, is we see something insane and remember it, and that's all we want to talk about. But yeah, it really depends on the guest. Most of them, I mean,
for a lot of those guests, we knew them before, so it was not as difficult to have conversations. But if it was someone that we were all coming in cold, I think I would at least try to bone up on a lot of stuff. Also, a lot of times, some of the fun of the show is us not knowing things and maybe either doing research while we're talking to them, like going through their IMDb while we're speaking to them, or like their Wikipedia, just to be like, is this true? This is crazy. Like, what is this thing? You know, that it makes it feel a little fresher, I think, for us, because if we come in knowing everything, then we sort of just feel like every other show, whereas this adds a sense of spontaneity to it. That's also just an excuse for being lazy, though.
I mean, it seems like, well, from the George Lucas end, and I guess I was wondering about this too. It seems like Connor has or had a love of Star Wars from very early on. I assume knew a lot about George Lucas.
Yeah.
Is his George Lucas mainly stuff he would know anyway? Like, he's just watched all these interviews.
Yeah.
Or is it, you know, as doing the character, is he actually like going out and seeking out interviews? Or is it mainly just this is going to come to him anyway and he knows it?
I think it's stuff mostly he would come to him anyway. I mean, look, we've been doing this for so long that anytime George Lucas makes the news in any small way, we each get 35 text messages. You know what I mean? Like, it's just how it is, you know? So I think we will learn new stuff that way. He also usually before a show will Google George Lucas and then click the news tab just to make sure nothing has happened in the last like 2 hours that we're going to miss, you know? But I think he would have known all that stuff anyways. We all like to do deep dives on things and we all like to learn a lot about things that we like, and you know, Star Wars is something where it's like there's not a lack of information about Star Wars out there, you know. It's all out there, and when it's something that's what you're into, you know, it's easy to learn things. I don't think he really does like research specifically for it. I think it's something where it's like he was interested in this, he learned this, now he knows it, and he's able to like pull out this stuff. But he's also an improviser, and there's a lot of stuff he does not know that he's able to BS his way through because he can make it sound good, you know. He's been doing quote unquote George for so long at this point that like he knows how George would react. His George would react, and that has become a crutch that I think has been able to be used a lot on that show.
I guess it's kind of second nature at this point for him. Yeah, because I'll see him pull out things. I'm like, you know, that's a pretty specific thing, and you probably saw that same interview I saw. Yeah. I mean, I've been a Star Wars fan. I'll actually say my introduction to Star Wars was actually the Ewok movies, like the Ewok Adventure and Battle for Endor. So those were the things I really liked as a kid. Like, because I'm a little too young to be part of that original generation. Like I wouldn't have been born for Star Wars, and then Empire and Return of the Jedi I was pretty young. But like when I was, you know, those movies came out when I was like 4 or 5, and my uncle, he was the first person I knew who had a VCR. So he had taped those, and I would go over to my grandparents' house and I would just watch those Ewok movies. And then, you know, eventually I saw the other ones, but the Ewoks were really my big thing. And, you know, mainly as a kid, I was into like G.I. Joe and Transformers and things like that. And then my love for the rest of Star Wars kind of came a little later. But then when I was like in high school, we had to do reports on like things we were really into. And my report was George Lucas. So
amazing.
Yeah.
Do you know my thing about the Ewok movies?
I don't know. I did not get to. I did start watching some of the marathon that you did. This
is a very hyper specific thing. Yeah. But we did watch the Ewok movies for that first marathon.
I know you got to them, and I haven't gotten to it yet, and I feel like I should.
No. During lockdown, eBay became a very bad habit for me during lockdown. Not that it wasn't before, but it like really ramped up during that. And I saw Ewok poster that I wanted from the first movie, from Caravan of Courage. And I said, oh, well, I gotta have that. It's Italian. It's like a beautiful Drew Struzan thing. You're pointing your finger up.
I think I saw this. I do think I think I saw it maybe on Twitter or something.
Yes.
Something's coming to my mind, but go ahead with your story.
So it arrived, you know, it was very cheap. It was like weirdly cheap in a way where I was like, yeah, I have to buy this. Like, I don't want someone else to have this. I want to have this. It arrived. I started to unbox it and realized I did the calculation wrong on the sizing because it was in centimeters to inches. And I assumed it was a normal sized poster when in fact it is 6 feet tall. at least 6 feet, maybe even more than 6 feet tall. So I held off on doing anything with it because I was living in New York at that time and I had a feeling I was probably going to move. So it was one of those things where I was like, let me just wait until I get into a new place and then I'll figure this out. So I sent it to a convention. Warwick Davis signed it, all that stuff. It's literally gigantic. I moved to LA and maybe like a year in, it probably took about a year before I was like, okay, it's finally time. Let's do this. My entrance hallway is just big enough where I was like, this is the space. I'm not going to hang up anything on this wall. I'm going to hold on to this space and wait for it to come. And then I got it linen backed professionally by this company, Fourth Cone Restoration, which is, if people haven't seen how they linen back posters, you should absolutely look up this company because it's fascinating. Like they like wet it with water to like make it flat, and then they attach linen to the back of it with glue, and it's truly amazing. And then I had to get it framed, which if anyone knows custom framing, like it's expensive, right? So I was calling all these places and they were like, it's gonna be like $3,000, something like that. And I was like, that's so much money. I'm just not gonna get it framed right now. And then I went to go pick up the poster. They go, we know what your next question is. And I said, oh yeah? And they said, how am I gonna get this framed? And I said, exactly. That's exactly my next question. They said, we know a guy, he'll give you a discount for doing it through us. And it was like a fourth of the price that normally it would be. So now it's like hanging up on my wall and it's so much, it's taller than me. It's gigantic, but it's like the perfect, like, welcome to my apartment thing, you know?
Oh,
and it's
awesome.
If I ever move into a house, it's going to be the focal point of that house. So that's my Ewok movie connection.
As you were starting to say that, I was like, oh, I do feel like I saw that it was like really large.
Yeah.
So it is it's in your house right now, like over to the side right there. Yeah.
6 to 8 feet that way. Yeah.
Oh, that's great. Had you watched the Ewok movies before that marathon?
Yeah, I had seen them when I was a kid. I didn't really remember them that well. I remember them being very weird in a way that I liked, and I still like them for that. Like, I like that they're just on horses, you know, and that there's like chickens around and stuff like that. Like, that it feels like he shot this in the backyard of the ranch, which I think is very funny. And I like how they feel like TV movies, but also have like Phil Tippett stuff in them. It's funny seeing like a high budget TV movie from that era, and they look great on Disney Plus now. They're like so clear and like so beautiful. I'm very curious. You may know the answer to this. They got released theatrically in Europe, right? They came out in movie theaters there. On Disney Plus, they're in 4:3. I'm so curious if they shot them in 16:9, like in a widescreen, because I've never seen them widescreen. But if they came out in a movie theater, I feel like they had to have come out in 16:9 over there. I don't know.
That I don't know. That's not something I have considered. It's something we'll have to.
I think about it constantly.
Well, I mean, one of the questions I was going to get to is you've been doing this show for a while, George Lucas Talk Show. Mm-hmm. I know, at least as of the documentary, and I haven't heard anything otherwise, no actual George Lucas yet. Yeah. Right?
Yeah.
So, but it seems like he's aware of it, or at least his people are aware of it. Is there any developments in that area?
Yeah, I mean, we've tried a bunch. Obviously, we do shows at San Francisco Sketch Fest every year, which is a comedy festival that happens in like January and February yearly. So every time we go up, we ask, and every time we go up, we get a very nice letter back that is not a form letter, that is literally like, the first one that we got was like, look, we talked about this and we want you to know that an actual conversation was had. Like, we really, really thought about this. He's not going to be able to do it, right? But we wish you and Connor and Griffin, all the, have so much fun doing the George Lucas Talk Show at Sketch. Like, they named all the things where it's like, you guys know what this is, this is not a mystery anymore. And then they end it both times by saying, but please keep asking, don't stop asking, which I think is fascinating. I think it's very like surprising and interesting. I would love it if one day it happened. I have truly no idea if it ever will, but enough people in his orbit and that work for him either watch the show or know about the show or have engaged in the show in some way that I would be surprised if he doesn't know, but I don't know.
Right.
He seems like, at least, in the past, he's pretty well versed in what's going on. I don't know if he is still as tapped in with all that or not, but yeah, I would love it. I have no idea what that show would be. It would be very interesting to figure out what the vibe is, but I have no doubt in my mind that Connor Griffin and I guess could figure out how to do that, someday.
Well, I mean, we have one question we know is the Ewok movie question. What
That's
is
true.
right? So
that's true. But we also sort of don't want to talk to him about Star Wars. That's kind of our thing. Is like he's talked about Star Wars enough. You know, I think.
But who's asking him that question? That's
a great point. A great point. I think if we were to talk to him about stuff, it would have to be things like that literally I've never heard him talk about. Like, you know, I want to talk to him about like Radioland murders and more American Graffiti. And like, you know, the thing that we always say is he was an assistant cameraman at Altamont when Gimme Shelter was being filmed, but his camera jammed, so none of his footage is in there. And I'm just like, did you see the Hells Angels kill that guy? Like, where were you? What was going on? You know, I want to hear him talk about that. And he's never, ever brought that up. So I think things like that interest us more than tell us about Lot Dodd. You know, like that's not as exciting. And I only said Lot Dodd because he's sitting right in front of me.
Right.
You know,
gotcha.
But, you know, who knows? Who knows? I think it's also one of those things where like, you don't know how that's going to go and you don't know what you're going to talk about until you're sitting in front of him. Right. Where it's like, what energy is he giving us? Is he into this? Does this feel like an obligation? You know, what is the whole vibe here? I don't know. You know, I would love for it to happen. I'm going to keep trying, but we want the invite to the opening of the museum. That's really what we want. Yeah. Because that's opening next year.
So it is actually happening next year. It seems like it's been in the works for a while. I know they were trying to get it in Chicago, right? Like that was the original plan, and Chicago screwed that up somehow.
Chicago said no.
I think there were at least a few other options.
San Francisco said no. Yeah, there was a whole bunch of stuff. As far as I know, the plan is still 2025. I haven't heard anything to the otherwise. It's almost done. Like I've driven by it a bunch because I'm in LA now, and it seems like it's moving along. Connor wrote a song about the Lucas Museum, and there's like an animated music video about it. It's on our soundtrack record. You know,
I have the digital. I also have somewhere I have the record as well.
Amazing.
I have this. I don't have a record player, but I have a slowly growing collection of records that are associated with podcasts, which is not a.
It's a very specific niche.
It's very specific. Like I have the Dead Eyes song from Dead Eyes, and then I have like Mission to Zix. Are you familiar with that one?
Of course.
So it's like those three. Sorry, go ahead.
That's so funny. No, I love that. I love that you listen to Mission to Zix. Those people are some of my favorite people. I love them. But we were told by people at the museum that while the museum was being built, that song was being played over the loudspeakers multiple times a day, which I think is so insane, you know? So the least that they could do is invite us to the opening, you know, the very least.
Absolutely.
We'll see.
And so how far is it actually like from you? You said you drive by it all the time.
Probably 30 minutes, 25 minutes. Like when you're in that part of town, it's like pretty easy to drive by it, you know, it takes up a lot of space. So it's probably 30 minutes maybe.
That's exciting. Every so often I'll see a job posting for it and I'm like, I don't know if I want to uproot my entire family to go work it. But like if I'm going to do it, it's going to be for something like that, like the Lucas Museum.
It's not in an ideal part of town, but it's near USC. And I think it's just one of those things where it's like they had the space and they were able to get that much space there, you know, but it's a little out of the way for a lot of people, but I'm looking forward to it. It seems like it's gonna be very cool, and I don't know, put me on the board, you know.
I think you could swing that. You've got
talk my way into it.
10 years of producing a version of George Lucas.
I could do the real thing.
Yeah, absolutely. A few more things I want to cover. George Lucas has done a number of marathons. We talked about it a little bit. You watched all the Star Wars movies. You watched Studio 360 on the Sunset Strip, right? Arliss.
Studio 60, Arliss.
You've raised a bunch of money for charity. I think the initial one was for people who worked at UCB Theater, right?
The theater had closed down pretty abruptly, obviously, when COVID happened. And the staff was not compensated fairly, we thought.
Right.
So there was a GoFundMe going around. And I think at that first one, we raised like $22,000 for them or something like that, which was rad.
Wow.
But yeah, we've done a ton of fundraising for, you know, different charities or theaters. We did the Museum Moving Image in Queens. We raised like $20,000 for them or something like that. We have chairs in this Museum Moving Image. They have a movie theater in there, and we have chairs with our names on them, but it says retired filmmaker George Lucas, Watto, and Patrick.
Right.
And then on the wall, when you walk in, it has the wall of people who gave money. And we are above because we gave more money than George and Melody Hobson,
Oh, wow.
which is very funny to me.
I wonder if he knows that.
I don't know.
Has he walked through and seen that? And like,
my gut says no, but yeah.
So like what? So you said 22,000? Is that
was for
the initial one? Yeah. So like, what's do you have an idea of like what the total?
I think it's like 275.
Oh, wow.
It's somewhere in that range.
That's a lot of money.
It was a lot of money. Yeah. Yeah. People were very generous, and it was, a lot of people, if they were still working, had nothing else to spend money on while they were locked up. They're like, I'm not going to the movies. I'm not like spending money frivolously.
Stimulus checks. So
yeah.
Send some money their way.
But yeah, it was something around there.
I mean, George Lucas should feel good about that. Like all this money being raised in his name. His name. All things that are in your favor for. Look, we love the guy there.
Yeah, we love the guy. I like to say that there's a difference between making fun of and poking fun at.
Right.
And I think that we will poke fun, but I don't think we ever really make fun. Ideally.
Right.
Because we love the guy and he changed all of our lives and, means so much to all of us. And the least we can do is have a little fun.
Right. It doesn't seem mean-spirited. I don't
think so, yeah.
From anything, you'll hear people in interviews talk about how he has a really good humor. They say sly sense of humor, something like that, dry sense of humor. So, he'd probably be okay with it. He also has detours, which, maybe... Sure. Maybe someday we'll see. I hear it's just one button you got to press.
That is true. Yeah. I would be shocked if people saw it. Unless it gets leaked by someone who worked on that show, I would be very surprised if that ever came out. But you never know. Weirder things have happened, So
I remember a couple of years ago, there was like 4 or 5 minutes that leaked, and it was on, I don't know if it was on Reddit or if it was on Reddit. YouTube and Reddit. And I watched it, whatever was on there. And there was a part with Jar Jar, and he had like some sort of the comic sitcom trope of 2 dates in one night. That's the thing I remember from it.
Yeah.
And it was like taken down like really, really soon after.
Yeah. I mean, hypothetically, if I had seen a bunch of episodes, hypothetically, Jar Jar's in that show a pretty good amount.
Right. And it's Ahmed Best, right?
And it is Ahmed Best. Yeah.
So
there's at least one episode that I'm thinking of that I think is very funny.
Right. If you're imagining this,
I'm imagining a show hypothetically, Right.
Okay. I was wondering, I feel like you've got to be in the orbit of some people who are involved in that. So
hypothetically,
but they would never show you that, I'm sure.
No.
So
why would they?
Right.
Why would they?
So have there ever been any guests who completely didn't get it and actually thought they were going to be talking to George Lucas? I mean, so there's not getting like the bit and like, not being into it, but like actually thinking I'm going to go talk to George Lucas. I assume that when you're booking people, you're giving some sort of, this is not actually George Lucas.
Was it? There was someone, and I'm like remembering the conversation in my head, but I can't remember who the face was of someone where it was like, it's crazy that George does this show. And I was like, yeah. Oh, well, it's actually a comedian. I can't remember who it was. I don't know. I do remember we did a show in Detroit. It was just outside of Detroit in this town called Hamtramck, Michigan. And I, without telling Connor, got the town council to name it George Lucas Talk Show Day in Hamtramck, Michigan that day. And they came to the show and read a proclamation saying like, whereas today, June 16th, whatever in Hamtramck, Michigan is George Lucas Talk Show Day. And the guy who was on the council or worked for the mayor or whatever who came to read it, he thought it was George, which is funny because it like very much states it in the email that they read at the thing,
Wait a minute.
Yeah. There was someone, I can't remember who it was. It doesn't happen that often because I think I like pretty clearly stated out in the email. It's happened with reps. Like when I'm emailing someone's like agent or manager, they're like, so is it actually George? And I'm like, you didn't read the email. Like you clearly just like skimmed this and now we're and like you gave it real thought. But I don't want someone to show up and be mad about. There's people who haven't done it because they said I'm friends with George and I don't want to make him mad.
Right.
That's definitely happened. But yeah.
Just out of not necessarily knowing anything, like he has a problem with it, just assuming that on the off chance.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
And some of those people, like, I haven't spoken to him in 30 years. I don't want him to be mad at me. And I'm like, he wouldn't, but it's okay. Like, he's not going to know that you did this specifically,
Right. So I want to get to the Naboo movie. So this happened recently. It was May 19th in conjunction with the 20th anniversary of the release of episode 1.
Yeah.
You produced, hosted, narrated a live reading of the Phantom Menace. You had a pretty great cast, including Tony Hale as Qui-Gon Jinn, Tawny Newsome as Padme Amidala, Haley Joel Osment as Anakin. Could you talk a little bit about how that came about?
So we're with the guys from the Star Wars Minute podcast, Pete and Alex, and they also produced this and narrated it with me. But they reached out to me because I was in LA now, and they were like, we've always wanted to do a live reading of Star Wars, and with the anniversary of Phantom Menace, it feels like it makes sense. Would you want to do it? And I was like, you could have stopped that sentence so much earlier, and I would have said yes. We didn't. Yes, the answer is yes, of course. Sounds great. So I reached out to this theater that I do a lot of stuff at, Dynasty Typewriter here in LA, and was like, hey, we want to do this in May. Do you have any dates? And they were like, we're pretty much all booked up in May, except we have May 19th open. And I was like, well, that's perfect. That's the ideal date to do it on.
That's the date.
Yeah, so that's great. And it sort of came together pretty easily, weirdly. It's a lot of parts to cast, but it was a lot of people that I had worked with before. Some of them I'd never worked with before. I'd never worked with Tawny. I'd never worked with Lorraine. Eric Bauza, who did Jar Jar, I sort of knew, but we had never really done much together. And basically everyone we asked said yes. Pretty much that's our first choice cast for a lot of those. And the only ones who didn't were not available. That was the reason why they couldn't. And they were great. It was so much fun. It's one of the things I'm the most proud of that I've worked on. And, we wanted that movie. I think it's a bad rap generally. And I made sure to tell everyone beforehand. I was like, listen, this movie gets dunked on sometimes. I don't really think it's fair. And I don't want that to be what tonight is. I want tonight to be a celebration. I don't want it to be, let's pretend like this movie's garbage, because it's not, And I think everyone took that the right way, and they all knew what I meant by that, where again, it's the poking fun of making fun of. I don't think we made fun of the movie. I think we poked fun with the movie.
Right.
And I think we took what we liked about it and, emphasized that. And some of those people had never seen that movie before, so it was a very cold reading for them. Some of them had seen it 25 times, there was a lot of stuff we had to adjust because for cultural sensitivity reasons, which is obviously the right thing. There's some voices we had to work on. And I think everyone knew that and went for it the right way and was able to look at it and be like, okay, well, what is something that we can do with this character that is not a problem,
Right.
And, the Nemoidians, they played them like Southern lawyers, Southern gentlemen, and Jar Jar, say which about Jar Jar. I love the guy. Look, the thing I grabbed earlier to show you, I bought the Regal Robot concept bust mug.
Oh, man, you got it.
I got it. Just got it in the mail.
Is that beautiful. So I know there was a limited edition one, and then there was a not as limited one. Which one is that? Is that
this is the signature edition. There was one where Tony McVeigh would draw a sketch on it, which that was too for my blood,
okay.
So I got the one where it's just the signature. It's still a limited because I think they only had it up for 2 weeks or something like that, or maybe a week. Maybe it was a week, but I'm pretty high up. I'm trying to see. I think I'm number 13, which is pretty good. Oh, wow. And I think they made 250 or something like that. It's great though. It looks great. But Eric did Jar Jar. He's the voice of all the Looney Tunes primarily. He does most of the Looney Tunes, and he did it as Daffy Duck reading as Jar Jar. And it really changed the way you look at that character. You're just like, oh yeah, this character is a Looney Tune. That's what he is. And it makes so much more sense when you're not more sense, but it makes so much sense when you're watching it like that, where you're like, oh wow, that's interesting. There's a lot of lines in that movie that are good lines, but maybe weren't directed or said the correct way, in a way where you're like, I don't really feel like you're selling that. But when you hear someone else say it in a different inflection, a different tone, a different, intention, it's interesting because you're like, that line does work. It's really weird to see that. We also did the shooting script, which is different than the final product. So there were some deleted things that I had never really heard in there.
Yeah, there's that one where Valorum is you betrayed me, which I don't remember it. I don't remember hearing that or seeing it. I mean, maybe a long time ago, but that is interesting. And they took that out But go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, the one that I always think of is when Anakin is flying the N1 starfighter with R2 up to the droid ship, and Anakin says something like, "You're right, this is nothing like pod racing." And then like 2 minutes later, he goes, "Now this is pod racing." And you're like, that line is supposed to be a response to something. Like, it makes so much more sense when you hear that. But it was very interesting and very fascinating. Pete from Star Wars Minute, who was also doing it, he was the script guy. So he was the one who was editing the script a little bit down to make it a little bit shorter. It was still pretty long, but it was a little bit shorter. And I didn't read it beforehand, specifically because I was like, I want to see what's different in here with everyone else at the time. So it was a very cool experience. It's all on YouTube. People can watch it at naboomovie.com, and it's up there for free. And then, we got the next one coming up August 10th, 2024. If you're in the LA area, you can get tickets. They may already be gone by that point because they're moving quick, but you can also get live stream tickets, and those are super helpful for us to just like keep doing these shows, to cover all the weird costs for props and music and all that stuff. So if you get a live stream ticket, it does really, really help us. And then I'm sure there will be more down the line, but it's going to be very fun. The cast is insane. The cast is genuinely crazy. It's a lot of returning people, but there's some new people that are truly, truly bananas. I'll rate you 1, and I don't want you to say it, even though it'll be out at this point, but I just want you to react.
Oh, I see it. Oh, wow. That's that is wild.
It's very weird, but there's a lot of cool people doing this one, so I'm very excited for it.
I have a number of questions.
Yeah.
I think you covered a lot of what I was going to ask. Back to Eric Bauza as Jar Jar. So how did that come about? Like, was it always like Daffy Duck, or was it potential other cartoon characters, other options? I said the Nemoidians were like Southern lawyers. I was thinking Droopy Dog, but I don't know if that's quite right. That's what it kind of reminded me of.
I mean, with Jar Jar, it was tough because I asked Ahmed. He was very excited about it. He was not in town, and he was like genuinely bummed he couldn't do it.
That was gonna be my other question. Was that because I know you've had him on the show?
Yeah.
And I was like, was there ever any consideration for bringing him in as another character, giving him a 100%. Chance as a okay? But go ahead.
No. I fully gave him free reign. I said, if you want to freaking play Padme, you can play Padme. Like, do whatever you want to do. And he was like, this sounds awesome. I'm so sad that I'm not in town for it. Was it's when that happens, it's tough when that happens, because you're like, okay, now we're back to square one. What do we do? And with a character like that, you got to do it right. You got to do it in a way that isn't, a problem. So I was like, okay, I want to have a voice actor do it. Let me think of who the best person would be. And I knew Eric. I tried to get him on another show, and we like followed each other on stuff. So like we knew each other a little bit, but not really that well. And it was just, it worked out great because I knew he was a big Star Wars guy, and I knew he was a big Episode 1 guy, and he had like a Qui-Gon tie that he wore that night. Like he was all in, and he was so excited when I asked him. So I said, you can do Jar Jar, or you can do any one of your voices. And secretly, I was hoping he would do Daffy. That's what I was like secretly hoping. And it was Kismet, and he emailed back and said, what about Daffy? And I said, yes, absolutely. Thank you so much. I didn't want to suggest it because you don't want to like pimp someone into having to do a voice. You don't want to be like, okay, dance for me, do the voice. But he was very happy to do it. And it was great. And it was truly like the only way I could have seen that working, which was very exciting. So I'm very happy that it worked out that he was around and into it. I think I answered that question there.
No, you did. So is there one official voice, or is he one of them? I don't know if this is, I know sometimes like
the Looney Tunes, you're saying?
Yeah. Like, is he the official Daffy Duck, or do they sometimes have other people doing it? I know he does. I know it looks like he's done a lot of them. I just didn't know if he's like the one.
I believe at this point he is the Daffy. I think for a lot of the other ones, they bop around between guys a lot. Like Eric will do Bugs, but also, oh God, what's his name? Is Jeff Bennett does Bugs sometimes. There's a few Bugs that will like pop up based on project to project, but I believe he is the Daffy at this point. I'm not as well versed in the intricacies of Looney voices as a lot of people, but I know for a lot of things they will pop between some of their guys. They've got a few guys, but he seems to be their go-to at this point.
Okay. Yeah, I think he did go into he went into Porky Pig, I think, at least during the show too.
Yeah.
So I saw like Bugs and Porky Pig, I think, on his IMDb as well.
Very talented guy.
You kept it pretty close to the script for the Naboo movie. Obviously there were the different interpretations of voices. Was there ever did you ever have any consideration of like adding stuff, like adding full on scenes?
Yeah, I don't think so. I think we wanted to keep it as close to what it was because we're not George. I don't want to. Who are we to say, oh, this should have been here or whatever? I just wanted it to be a straight reading. This is it. You hear what's on the page, all that. I think everything in the script, I'm pretty much maybe a few sentences here and there were like added or adjusted to like make something make a little more sense, but things were cut out for sure, just for timing and pacing reasons. And it takes a long time to read a script. Like this thing was almost 3 hours as it is. So if that stuff had not been cut out, it would have been probably 45 minutes longer. But it was mostly just like lines here or there, stuff that wasn't super necessary or memorable or even in the movie to begin with.
So what were there? Whatchamacallit? Like, were there rehearsals or so this was all first time?
Yep.
Only time.
Everyone showed up maybe 20 minutes before. They were given the scripts beforehand. And, obviously some of them had seen the movie, but everyone showed up 20 minutes before. A lot of people met each other. Vic, who was Obi-Wan, and Tony, who was Qui-Gon, had never met before. And their chemistry and just is so good in it that you would think that they knew each other. But I watched them meet right before we went on stage, and that was that. And I think it's the ideal way to do it. Also when you're working with a cast that big and with that many heavy hitters, it's hard, to be like, hey, can you come to this thing for 3 hours? And then B, to be like, and also, can you come another day so we can do a rehearsal? Especially when you're, not compensating them in a way that a TV show would or a movie would or whatever. It was all on the fly, all fresh, all new. And I think that was the right way to do it.
Tony Hale's mispronounce Coruscant a number of times. And then, Haley Joel Osment. Do you guys do you refer to him with all three names when you talk to him?
That's a great question. I will usually do Haley or Haley Joel, but my sister's name is Haley. So it's hard if I'm talking to my family about it. I'll have to be like Haley Joel, Haley. But
I can't think of it. It sounds weird. I'm
of
just
course. Yeah. You got to do the whole thing. He's great. He's so fun and he's down for anything. And he's always game. And it's really rad. It's really rad to just have him hang out and be around. And you're you've had the coolest career and you're so normal and chill. And it's, he's the best. He's the best.
Right. And there's a world where he was Anakin, right? I think he said
he auditioned.
I saw the interview you did with him. Yeah. I think it was probably the first time you had him on. And he mentioned, I think he got to a certain point. Yeah. I don't think he was final round or anything, but I mean,
he was up. He did it. He did it, which is exciting. I mean, there's a very real world where he was Anakin, he had the career at that point where that could have happened. But if he had gotten Anakin, he probably would not have done Sixth Sense, just timing wise, So it's this weird,
it's
dominoes that you're pushing down where things would have been very different for him. So
very different. So was he first choice?
Yes,
did immediately that? Right. Yeah, that makes sense. He does such a good job. I mean, he's a little creepy as the as Anakin.
But that script is weird, So you gotta take it, read the script the way you want to read it,
Yep. Yeah. Very, very funny. I was a little surprised that Griffin was not Watto. Is that was that just a not available thing? He's
just not in LA. Okay. And I wasn't going to be able to pay for flights to come out.
Gotcha.
So, yeah.
I was going to ask if you tried to get anyone from National Movie to appear. We talked about Ahmed. Anybody else? I
don't think we tried anyone else. I think he was the one. The only other one we probably would have tried, but we ended up cutting the pod race sequence, which if you haven't seen it, it will make sense in context, is Greg Proops, who's one of the two-headed narrator, the play-by-play announcer guys, Odin Bede. He's probably the only other one I would have asked just because I don't know who else would have done it. Nobody really lives in LA except for I don't even know if Sam Jackson lives here. I think Sam Jackson doesn't even live here. So like, there's not a lot of people around, which is tough. But who knows? Maybe in future readings, people from the movies will be in them. I don't know. You'll have to wait and see.
I guess we'll have to find out. It seems like it was pretty successful. Obviously, you're doing a second one at least. So, maybe word will spread and people will be willing to, Liam Neeson. Well,
yeah.
He's dead already, but he could be could be somebody else.
Yeah. Let him play God, I don't even know.
Yeah,
Tion Medon. Maybe he can play Tion Medon.
Wait, is he the from the Udapa? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, let him play him.
I don't know that one. Oh no. I pulled it out. I figured.
I tried to go deep cut.
So we got the Great Kamino Kaper coming up, and you said your hope is to do more. I think.
Look, we got 7 more. We got 7 more. So let's go.
Well, I would hope that you'll at least complete the trilogy. But yes. So you got 7 more for...
As of now, I think the goal is to do as many as we can do.
But you also got Solo. You also got Rogue One.
A great point. Yeah.
Are we going to get to the Ewok adventure?
I would love it. Honestly, before Ewok Adventure, I would like to do Holiday Special. That would be my preference.
Okay.
But yeah, I mean, look, we'll see how these go. Will we do the Clone Wars movie? Who do I get to play Stinky? I don't know. I think we know Bobby Moynihan would play Stinky. I think that's the obvious Stinky.
So I recently spoke to friend of the George Lucas talk show, and now I feel friend of this show. My show is called Heyblabber Podcast. I don't know if I've mentioned that. Bobby Lopez. So, double EGOT winner. The world. I know you had him on your recent Oscars show. Do you remember what his connection to Jar Jar Binks is?
Remember what his connection to Jar Jar Binks is?
Yeah.
No.
One of his first jobs, he worked with the musician Miko, who did the Star Wars disco. Is it coming back to you?
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah, there was a song, right? Wasn't there a Jar Jar song?
There's a song. It's called Cousin Jar Jar, and he co-wrote the lyrics with the individual who he co-wrote Avenue Q with.
Jeff Marks.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah. And so he co-wrote that, and he also provides the voice of Jar Jar. So it was exciting to get him on and talk about that, because I'm surprised it's not a more well-known fact. And then when I saw what you guys talked about, I was like, oh, I'm surprised it didn't, because there's not that much about Jar Jar Binks out in the world.
Sure. Here's the thing with scoops on our show. We get a lot of good scoops from people, but they're usually 3 hours into an episode. So the people who would be reporting on those things don't watch that long. So a lot of these things that we have learned just go unnoticed by the world because it's so deep buried into an episode, which I think they were pretty deep into that episode. I think they were pretty far in.
So you said a lot of the cast is returning for the Great Kamino Kaper. I know certain characters are not in the movie. Are you able to talk about, I guess you're probably not able to talk about too much what the cast is.
I mean, a lot of people are coming back, primarily playing the same characters for the most part, but there's also a bunch of new people. We have more people in this show than we had in the last show, and we had a lot of people in the last show. I think the last show had 16 cast members or 15, and we have 19 now. So there's a bunch of new, but also fresh faces. I don't think people will be disappointed by it, and I'm sure by the time this comes out, it will be announced. I just don't want to say anything right now in case before it gets announced, people bail.
Yeah, no problem.
But there's some people that are genuinely. Someone is flying out from New York. Okay, which is bizarre to me. Someone I only kind of know.
All right, so I guess I want to talk about, this is a Jar Jar Binks theme podcast. We have discussed them a little bit. I guess we should talk a little bit more about Jar Jar, what your feelings are. I think you're a little younger than me, so I would guess you were maybe more in age range, but maybe a little older than Jar Jar is necessarily intended. But
I mean, I was 7 when that movie came out. So it's kind of the perfect age for it, Right. I've always been pro Jar Jar. I think, there's a point in everyone's life, especially in a Star Wars fan's life, though, when you feel like you've grown out of it, or it's not the cool thing anymore. And after those prequels, or even during the prequels, to be honest, but after the prequels came out, it was okay, well, that was a part of my life. It's not really anymore, but always liked Jar Jar, always been a Jar Jar defender. Obviously, I bought the frickin' maquette, which was nothing. So it would have been weird if I was not a Jar Jar guy. But I also, I understand criticism that people have on it, and they're totally right to feel those ways. But I think he's a very fun. I think he makes me laugh. And even in that re-release that came out a couple months ago, like I was like, he's killing. Like every joke's hitting right now. People are going for it. And I think being 7 at the time was the perfect time for it. And if I had been any older, maybe it wouldn't have been my thing. But like, being able to be a child when that movie came out really hit me hard. And, I have so many toys from that movie because I was the right age. Like even, I've got the freaking all these action figures around my apartment are just like mostly Phantom Menace action figures because I have so many of them. But I wish there was more Jar Jar content out there. I hope he comes back in something. I think if Disney had any balls, they would bring him back in a project. Put him in Andor, Put him in a Senate scene in Andor. How great would that be? People would lose their minds. Something. And I'm very happy that Ahmed's being brought back into the fold with the Keller and Beck stuff and with, Jedi Temple Challenge and all that. And it's very exciting for him. And I hope that I just want him to be happy and I want him to live his best life. And if that includes Star Wars, great. And if it doesn't include Star Wars, that's also totally fine. But he's such a smart guy, such a cool guy. And like, I want the best for him. I shouldn't talk about a project that's not out, but I worked with him on something else that has yet to be released. I cast him in something else that is yet to be released. Okay. And I'm waiting on it to come out because I was hoping this is pre him coming back in Mando. And I really wanted to kickstart the Ahmed Best Assance.
Ahmed Best.
So I'm still waiting on this thing to get to be out, but it's done. So hopefully soon. And when that comes out, I can come back and talk about it. But yeah, a cool guy, a great guy. And just like, it sucks what he went through and it sucks all the things that were thrown at him and him blamed on him and all that. And I'm sad that he felt the way he did about it for so long. And I'm happy that he seems to have come to a place of acceptance and of joy and of love for those movies that is genuine. So very pro Jar Jar.
Yeah, I mean, to a couple of your points, I definitely am hoping. I keep expecting Jar Jar to show up in something. I agree. Andor, I always think, he could be a secret leader of the Rebel Alliance.
Sure.
He could be doing the same thing that Leia and Mon Mothma and Bail Organa are doing, secretly leading. They could do a Jar Jar based show. We could get our friend Bobby Lopez to come back and do
write that musical,
the Jar Jar musical. There are so many things. There was like a 25th anniversary comic where they like added just like a couple new scenes or alternate scenes, and Jar Jar was in that, and it's like. Great. Anytime Jar Jar appears in something, I'm like, is this going to be it? It seemed like this is the year 25th anniversary. Like, let's start seeing Jar Jar and more things.
I know. But, I would love to. There's still time.
Yeah.
We got 5 more months.
We do.
Put him in Skeleton Crew. Have those little kids from Skeleton Crew find him. That sounds good. That's like the perfect spot to put him in,
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And I did love Keller and Beck's appearance in The Mandalorian. And it does seem like they could be leading towards Jar Jar being behind, I think someone said that's his ship. Or
I'm ready.
Like his ship. So maybe season 4 of Mandalorian, we'll see him.
I would love it. I
would love it too. I feel bad about all the hate that he got. I don't necessarily understand that. I can get being disappointed in something, but why, spend all your time and then going after actors that, are doing a job.
Yeah. People are dumb. That's why.
Doesn't make sense to me. Did you watch The Acolyte? How do you?
I did. I liked it. I was into it. I hope there's a season 2. I would love to see more of those characters and more of what happens in that time frame. I like that it's unburdened by a lot of, things that take place within those 20 years or whatever you want to call it that they've been sticking to. More than that, I guess 40 years. But I like that we really don't know what happens to 99% of those characters, and I hope they do more of it.
Anything could happen. Yeah, no, I liked it too. I thought it was really interesting. I like that time frame. We haven't seen that time frame on screen. It's good. So what are your thoughts on the Darth Jar Jar theory? I have to assume you're aware of it.
Yeah. I mean, look, I'm ready for, was it Rebuild the Galaxy? Is that what it's called?
Oh, yeah. The Lego one. Yeah.
Yeah. Starring Bobby Moynihan and written by my friends Dan Hernandez and Benji Sammet. And look, Have I seen some of it? Maybe. Is it very good? Maybe. Hypothetically, maybe.
Right.
You know? But I think that's going to be very good for the Darth Jar Jar community. And I am excited for that. I think it's a fun theory. I don't necessarily buy into it in any real way, but I do think it's fun and silly, you know? And I'm all for more people talking about Jar Jar, you know?
Yeah, agreed. I don't think I buy into it. I feel like something would have come out by now.
Sure.
Like
yeah.
I don't feel like they could have actually kept that a secret if there was something in Lucasfilm. Part of the problem with George Lucas selling to Disney is that this theory came out afterwards.
Yeah.
And so he's not really getting asked as much stuff. So I've never seen him be asked about this theory. And
yeah,
you know, we have no idea.
Really funny.
You know,
yeah.
I feel like if he was asked, I could see him just being like, yeah, that sounds good. That's what it is.
Sure, whatever you want.
That's what I was planning on doing.
Uh-huh.
So I don't even know, even if we got an answer from him, I don't know that we could fully believe it.
Yeah. Who knows?
So the Great Kamino Kaper set for August 10th. That's just 9 days before International Talk Like Jar Jar Binks Day, August 19th.
Oh, wow.
I mean, I'm assuming that this is why you set it for that day, like kind of.
That's exactly why. Yeah, right. Yeah. I knew that I wanted to get people in the mood and ready for it.
Right,
you know?
Right. Yeah. For the season. I don't know your plans for the Kamino Kaper.
Yes.
But
I thought you meant for International Talk Like Jar Jar.
Oh, well, I don't know those either. You know. Yeah. You'll have to let me know. Is it safe to assume that the entirety of the Attack of the Clones script will be translated into Gunganese? Is that?
Yeah, well, that's actually how George wrote it for the film script.
Oh yeah.
And then they had to retranslate it back when they were on set, which was annoying for people, but it seemed like it all worked out in the end. That's why some of those lines are a little clunky. It's like Google Translate, you know, when you do that, and it like doesn't always turn out the right way.
Yeah.
Yeah. The whole thing will be in Gunganese.
Oh, and, awesome.
Yeah, it's going to be cool. It's going to be different, I think, which is exciting for us.
Oh, great. So then what are your plans? I mean, International Talk Like Jar Jar Binks Day, like, do you celebrate privately? Or
I think there's only one plan, right?
Talk Like Jar Jar Binks.
Yeah.
Okay, there you go.
Yeah. I don't know what other plans could you have? That's the thing. That's the day.
Right. But like home, you could be
lock your doors and you just talk like Jar Jar Binks. Yeah.
All right. Good. So if you had the ability to work on any project for Lucasfilm, would you be interested in doing so? Like, in what capacity? On screen, behind the scenes?
Oh, sure. Yeah, I mean, look, I would love to cast something. Sure, I would love to. But also, the dream is to be either a background guy or a guy with like one line, and then you just get to go to conventions for the rest of your life. Yeah, that's the dream. You know, I'm very curious how all of the Disney era background guys will be for conventions. I'm very curious if like Mando guys will be doing conventions 40 years from now, or if that's just for the people who were part of the George movies. I don't know, but put me in a freaking Biff head, you know, in the background. I'm totally fine with that. I would love that. I'm not an actor, you know, I don't need that much attention on me. But if I could just walk across the screen dressed as a freaking Aqualish, yeah, man, I'm in.
It was was it NSYNC that was supposed to be in Attack of the Clones? Was that? Yeah. Was that were they the ones? Yeah.
Yeah. But then I've since heard that it's only some of NSYNC. I don't think Justin was there, and I don't think maybe Lance, but I just heard recently someone asked like Joey Fatone about it, and like 3 of them shot or something like that. That footage is out there. Put them back in, you know, McClunky them and put them in the movie.
That is one of the that is a tragedy that George does not have access to the movies anymore. Yeah. It can't just be adding. Yeah. I was so excited when McClunky happened. Yeah, it's
maybe the best thing to happen to Star Wars in the last 30 years.
Yeah, I'd say probably.
Yeah,
it's great.
My favorite thing is that clearly that edit was done before the Disney sale because George worked on it, and I think it was done around the 3D re-release time, which is like 2010, 2011, somewhere in there. Mm-hmm. Which means McClunky was just sitting on a shelf for 9 to 10 years and no one knew about it. And George knew. And it was like this little ticking time bomb where he's like, someday this is coming. This is going to happen. And he was just like patiently biding his time until this thing got released. That's my favorite thing about McClunky is that it was just there for so long and we had no idea.
And nobody knew.
Nobody knew.
I saw in your bio that it said you worked at Sesame Street. Could you talk about that a little bit? Like, how long was that? What'd you do?
Yeah, so I interned there in college, but the way that I got it is a fun story. Big Muppet kid growing up, and still to this day, it's like one of my interests, one of my core interests. And when I was, I would have been maybe 12-ish, Carol Spinney, who played Big Bird and Oscar, came out with a memoir, and he did a Q&A and like a reading from the memoir at the Yukon Puppetry School. And I grew up in Connecticut. So we went down and he did, gave his whole speech and then started a question and answer thing. And I asked, it's very fun because this is on video, like my dad was videoing it. So it's like nice to have this preserved forever. I go, do you ever give tours of the set? Right. And he goes, no, not really. You got to know someone, and like gave a little wink. Right. So we go and we meet him and he signs the book and stuff. We get our picture with him. We go home, send the picture out to him to be signed and send back to us. And he does it. And then like 3 or 4 months later, I get a postcard in the mail being like, hey, Patrick, it's Carol. If you ever want to come to the set, here's my number. Give me a call, which is crazy, So we give him a call. I go to the set when I'm 13, 14, something like that. I went 3 times in middle and high school, which was very cool. I really wanted to work there. It was like the thing I wanted to do. Star Wars and Muppets were like my 2 things, and SNL. Those are my like 3 things that I like really wanted to do, and didn't know in what capacity. So we go, it's great. Keep in touch, meet some other people there. Everyone's very nice to me, all that. I go to college in New York and I email this guy, Marty Robinson, who was Telly and Snuffy and a bunch of other characters. And I say, hey, I don't know if you know the internship person, but if you do, could you put me in touch? Like, I'm here. I would love to do it. And he puts me in touch. I get the job. So it's like, I go in for an interview and all that stuff. Kind of a little nepo-y, but at the same time, it doesn't matter,
Right.
I feel like I put in the time. I put in the time and the work to make this happen. So I interned there for like a year, and I was there a lot of very cool stuff. I was there, as of today, I was there for Frank Oz's last days working on Sesame Street. He has not gone back since then. And Jerry Nelson, who was the Count, and a whole bunch of other characters. Like, I was there for his last day on set. A lot of people who retired, it was there for their end or like close to the end. And it was, it was a wild experience, and it was very weird to like quote unquote work there. And it was a lot of, like making copies and getting coffee and stuff. But at the same time, like, I was able to come in on days I wasn't working and just like lurk in the back of the set and watch how things were done and how things were made. And it really was one of the first times when I got like real, set experience, or at least like exposure to being on set and knowing how things actually happen. It was very fun and very cool. And I will never take it off my resume because it's always the thing that people ask about.
Yeah. I mean, it sounds like an awesome job. Yeah. There was a time where I was like, how could I make that happen? But
yeah, totally.
Didn't figure it out. I had a Muppet phase too when I was young, and I remember when Jim Henson died, and that was I was so sad. I that's like one of those deaths that I think that's one that like as maybe of celebrity deaths that's affected me the most. Like I still wonder, what else he would have done.
Yeah. It's very sad, It's crazy when you think about how the majority of things that he did, starting at the Muppet Show, there's only like 15 years of that. Because the Muppet Show started in 76, I think, and then he died in 90. Like it's crazy how much he packed into such a short amount of time, Yeah.
I read the biography on him, or a biography on him a few years ago, and there was a lot of stuff in there that I was surprised about. That
Brian J. Jones, who wrote George Lucas's biography too.
I haven't read that one yet. I have it.
It's good.
But after I saw like the same guy wrote it, I was like, I guess I really should listen to that or read it. So there was something about like a nightclub that he was involved in.
Oh yeah.
You remember? Yeah. And I was like, I had no idea.
Yeah, he wanted to do this really in-depth, like almost a film nightclub. Like there'd be stuff projected on the ceiling and like movies playing on the walls and stuff. And it was going to be insane. He had so many insane ideas, and it's sad that, you don't get to see what he would be doing today. But that company, the company's still around, and they're still doing very cool motion capture puppetry stuff. And there's a lot of neat things that they're working on.
Yeah. Speaking of biographies, is that the Charles Schultz one back there on?
It is.
All right.
On my shelf. Yeah.
Looks very distinctive. I read that one too a while ago, but
I remember when I think I read that one on a set. I think I was working on a movie called It Comes at Night, starring Uncle Owen himself, Joel Edgerton. I was a PA, and my whole job was to sit outside the door of a house and not let people in for 12 hours a day.
Oh, wow.
And I got through a lot of books on that set.
I've heard your name at the end of episodes of I Said No Gifts. So is that like your day job? Is that okay?
Yeah, day job is I book podcasts for the Exactly Right network. So it's like 7 or 8 shows, probably weekly shows that come out. Okay. And yeah, it's just a lot of emailing and a lot of Excel spreadsheets to keep track of who's where and who's coming on when. And yeah, I send no gifts, and you need a ride and bananas, and that's messed up. They have a whole bunch of shows that I work on over there. So that's the day job. Been there 2.5 years, something like that.
Okay.
It's crazy. Yeah.
Cool. Is that like all done remotely, or is that part of why you...
It's mostly done remotely. We do have an office that I go into sometimes, but it's like once or twice a month I go in at this point. I'll probably start going in a little more. But yeah, it was one of the reasons I moved out here, was just, had a job that was based in LA. And even though it was mostly remote at that time, I knew the office was opening. So it just gave me a good excuse.
Awesome.
Yeah.
All right. I mean, I think that's largely covering the stuff I wanted to. Is there anything else that you want to discuss or plug? You got Naboo Movie just came out. You can watch that at naboomovie.com.
Yep.
Great Kamino Kaper, August 10th.
Yep. You can go to kaminokaper.com. Kaper is spelled with a K. I'm George Lucas, a Connor Ratliff story, which is the documentary about the George Lucas talk show. You can go to imgeorgelucas.com. It's on VOD. It's coming to more VOD platforms on August 20th. You'll be able to watch it on iTunes and all those spots. George Lucas Talk Show is all on YouTube. You can search that. I recommend, if you've never seen it, just finding a guest that you like and watching it that way. What else? Ideally, the documentary is coming out on Blu-ray very soon. We're working on that. Hopefully, I'm hoping by the end of the year, but we'll see. You can follow me on Twitter at Patrick Cotnoir, on Instagram at Cotnoir. My website's Patrick Cotnoir, and that's got all the info on all the stuff out there. So working on too many things, But
that's good.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. It's not bad.
It's good to be busy. And I don't feel like it's too presumptuous to ask, but if you do get on a Zoom call with real George Lucas, is it okay? Could you just loop me in as well?
Yeah, sure.
And I'll just
not presumptuous at all.
I mean, I feel like here's some questions.
Yeah.
Where did Heyblabber come from? What's the Gungan word for ice cream?
Great question.
What's the Gungan word for pretzel?
Sure.
And basically the rest of the English dictionary.
The dictionary. Yeah.
Because I have a translator on the website.
Sure.
It's there's only so much so far I can go. I don't want to make stuff up, and I would like some official.
You want the real answer,
right?
Yeah.
So just reach out to me. Check with my schedule too.
Sure.
If that's okay.
Yeah. And we can work around you, whatever you're doing, and we'll make sure that it works for him.
Okay, that sounds good.
I love it.
We could probably go on for a while, but I'll let you go. Thank you for talking to me. Bye.
Bye.
And that's the interview. Thanks so much to Patrick Cotnoir for taking the time to speak with me about the George Lucas talk show, the Naboo movie, the Great Kamino Kaper, and so much more. Reminder that you can go to naboomovie.com to watch a free recording of the stage reading of the Phantom Menace, and kaminokaper.com to buy tickets to the live reading of Attack of the Clones. The in-person tickets are sold out, but you can still get tickets to the live stream. If you can, support the production so we can get more readings for the rest of the films. After our discussion, the cast list was released, and it's once again impressive. There's a number of returning cast members, including Haley Joel Osment, Lorraine Newman, Bobby Moynihan, and Vic Michaelis, as well as new cast members Seth Green and Daniel Logan. If you didn't know, Daniel Logan portrayed Boba Fett in Attack of the Clones and is returning to the role more than 20 years later for this production. So this is pretty exciting. Another reminder that International Talk Like Jar Jar Binks Day is rapidly approaching. Now, there's a lot of debate as to when the International Talk Like Jar Jar Binks Day season begins, but by any definition, I think we can all agree that once August 1st arrives and the Jar Jars in a car start appearing in your house, that it's ITLJJBD season. So make sure you're preparing for the holiday and ready to speak like our favorite Gungan on August 19th. If you need help speaking Gungan, we have a number of resources to help you out for the holiday on the International Talk Like Jar Jar Binks Day website, including a list of Gungan words and phrases and a Gungan translator. If you have any questions or comments related to my discussion with Patrick Cotnoir about the show in general or anything Jar Jar related, send them to hey@heyblabber.com. Thank you for listening, and remember, don't boom the gasser or crash the boss's Heyblabber this week. Spake to you soon. Bombad bye.